Hello and welcome to another episode of Champagne Football. Look, usually we try and use this podcast as a bit of an escape. We just focus on the ridiculous and mostly inconsequential world of football. During the lockdown, we didn't try and focus too much on the pandemic because, as I said before, we like to use this as an escape. But some things just are too important to us. I'm talking about, of course, the Black Lives Matter movement, which we will be talking about a little bit. Essentially, what I just want to say, the podcast stance is quite simple, if not particularly eloquent. It's just that if you are a racist, you can go fuck yourself. I'm going to introduce everybody here who's with us today. Firstly, Becky, how are you?
Yeah, doing all right. Thanks, Al.
And Ben.
Good to be here from across the pond this time, but I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, in the belly of the beast over in America. And coming back to us, Inam, how are you?
Thanks for having me, Hal.
Anyway, Becky, I know you have thoughts on this, so we'll start with you.
Yeah, I want to keep it quite simple from my point of view and for how I feel about everything that's going on. It is simple. Black Lives Matter. I don't think my life, with the privilege I've had in my life does not matter until Black Lives Matter, because my life is not currently under threat, and Black lives are. So it's as simple as that for me.
Brilliant. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it makes sense today to start with Ben, because obviously you are over in America where all this sort of ignited. So what has been your experience of that so far?
Well, I can only really speak to what's happening in my hometown specifically. I'm from Asheville, which is a mid-sized town in North Carolina, about 90,000 people. Most people that kind of know the region know it as a really accepting place, a place where artists and people that brew beer, a very liberal place, very accepting of all people, kind of nestled up in the mountains of North Carolina, very popular tourist destination. But kind of under the surface of all that is the same institutionalized racism that you see all over the country. So we have had protests for about the past 2 weeks in my hometown. The Black community has done a really good job of organizing people and making sure that the white community members know that, you know, it's their movement to lead, and that, you know, white people are there to be allies, not necessarily to try to steal the show. So the first couple of nights of protest, the protesters were fired upon by some of the police in my town with rubber bullets, and also fired on with some tear gas. And we actually made some national headlines because there was a medic tent that was set up, and it was designed to help assist protesters and police officers, anybody really that needed medical attention, just because the first night of protests were so violent. But there was a video of police officers coming in, ransacking the place, knocking all of the medics and doctors over that were there, dumping out water bottles, slashing them, throwing all of the medical supplies on the ground, basically just ruining the whole thing. And it really just kind of called to attention just the seriousness of the issue, and, you know, that this isn't an issue necessarily just in the big cities, in the New Yorks, in the LAs, or just in the South. This really is an issue that goes a lot deeper than that. And, you know, when the police, I'm not necessarily saying that, let me back that up a minute. When somebody in a position of power is dressed up in riot gear, that is their mindset. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that power hungry nature just kind of comes out, and it was captured on video for everybody to see. And it's just sad that it happened in my hometown. But just to give the people a little bit of context, There's a lot of issues that go a lot deeper than you would realize in my hometown. The Black community, it's really segregated. A lot of our Black community is focused in just little neighborhoods that kind of have remained throughout the years. And they don't have the same resources as the white communities in my hometown. The school systems in those areas aren't as well equipped. Black people are still stopped and frisked. In 2017, there was a video that went viral of a Black man in my hometown that was stopped and beaten by a training police officer just for jaywalking. So these issues that the Black Lives Matter movement are trying to broadcast to the world are very, very real, and they're happening all across America, not just in the big cities.
Yeah, and I think also not just all across America, but it's also brought light to the injustices across the whole world. I mean, you're South African living in London. I'd like to hear some of your thoughts.
I think coming from South Africa, it's just, I know Trevor Noah makes the joke. I think it's Trevor Noah. He says we've got the best racism. Like it's embedded into our culture. Like not too many years ago, we had my mom grew up under the apartheid regime. And I think in South Africa, it's not only about Black lives, it's also about Black women as well. Because I think in a lot of Black communities that you face so much hate that you start hating one another, in the sense that there's like a Black woman in general, not only in South Africa, go through a lot. And I think this is just how, in South Africa, man, it's not even about Black. It's not what, as I said, like, I think it's for me, it's very difficult to talk about, because I'm lucky. Like, I've grown up in a very sheltered environment. I've gone to very nice school. I've studied, but most of my friends, man, they back home, that's it for them. Like, they have to make do with whatever. So I think when I say Black Lives Matter, I not only say for Black men that are being killed every day because of the color of their skin, but it's also about Black women. And I think in South Africa, it's just a whole different ballgame, and it's just like you get used to it. So when I come to London and someone says something racist, or I'm at a game and I hear someone slur, it's just like I've learned to shield that part of. I've kind of learned to shield that part off, because you just, in South Africa, it's in the jokes, it's in the pub, it's in the dressing room, it's everywhere. So I think it's a very important fight, and I don't think it stops now. I think it has to carry on, because it's a generation of people that are going to grow up with the parents that are racist, and they're going to end up having those ideas. So I just think it's very difficult, but I think it's important that people are standing up for it, and I think this is very, very good.
Yeah, you referenced racism at football grounds in England there, and obviously, this is brought to attention a lot of issues. I'm wondering if you're optimistic or pessimistic, or what you expect to change in football as we try and move this towards sport, which is obviously the main crux of this podcast. I wonder if you're optimistic about any changes there, or if you think it's all a bit sort of showy and false and it will die away in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think, man, how many years have people been fighting for racism in England? Like, I think it only takes one guy to say something stupid or throw a banana peel. I remember I was at Arsenal-Tottenham away, the 4-2 game.
Mm-hmm.
I left after 3-2. I was in the Tottenham away end. But I remember Aubameyang scoring the first goal. And I remember, I was a bit far back, but I remember a banana landing right in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, how is that happening? That was last year in 2019. And it's just that it just takes one idiot. And I think the more stricter the Premier League are, and like, there's a lot of window dressing going on as well. I think a lot of people, a lot of companies, and a lot of organizations are doing speaking up on or whatever to kind of save face, because it's better to say something than not say something and not say anything at all. But I think it has to, it's you have to get someone in there to kind of change it, because if it's all whiteboard, nothing's going to change. You need
Yeah.
to get more, I don't want to say BAME because that's another whole different thing, because I don't think Asians and black people experience the same thing. So I can't say BAME, I'm sorry, but I think, yeah, it's tough for me to, because then it's like, well, then it can't just be about, then you go down a whole big rabbit hole. So I think things have to change at the top, basically.
Yeah, and maybe we've seen some news recently, Becky. You can talk a little bit about this, about what Premier League are hoping to do to sort of support the movement, maybe.
Just before we started actually talking today, the Premier League announced that for the first 12 matches and the restart, that they're going to put Black Lives Matter in place of the players' names on the back of their jerseys, which kind of goes to what Inam was saying of it's a movement, it's a way of making a statement, but until there's real change at the top levels, I mean, the FA board has no black representation on it whatsoever, so I don't know what real change they're trying to create until they get those voices into those positions.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult because they want to show that they're doing the right thing, but they've also got to behave in the right way. And yeah, they've got to take a hard look at themselves, and as we've spoken about, yeah, having the right people at board level, you know, just supporting it in every way possible. And I think
How many black head coaches have there been?
Yeah, very good
This
point.
needs to be a conversation that the movement pushes. Like you said, we need black people in positions of power, in powerful coaching positions. Otherwise, we're just talking about the racism that's slung from the stands. But nothing will really change until we can really kind of direct the conversation into that direction. There needs to be black people inserted into the game, into the industry at every level, really.
I think Darren Moore said something this week that the fact that they're still saying, well, look at Darren Moore, he's a black coach in a high position, is exactly what is still wrong. That it's like it's out of the norm to have a black coach. So it's just like it's hard, it's tough, man, because what do you do? Like, for example, I know Sterling said this and people might have taken this in the wrong way, but he was talking about Frank Lampard and Steven Gerrard and Ashley Cole and Sol Campbell. And I think I was talking to someone, or I saw something somewhere, and they're like, yeah, but Frank Lampard had to do his time at Derby. I mean, Derby were one step away from making the playoffs the season before.
Yeah,
So,
it's hardly
and
going
now
to the bottom of the rung, is it?
it's just like, what's his name? People talk about Joe Barton, but he's the guy that's really doing his time lower in lower divisions. And it's just that first of all, it's all about luck. And then obviously because Lampard was unbelievable player for Chelsea, and Gerrard, even Gerrard, like his first job is fucking Rangers, it's like the second biggest club in, sorry for swearing, but it's the second biggest club in Scotland, or the biggest club in Scotland. Yeah, it's just like there's a lot of people have to take a hard look in the mirror.
Yeah, it's the whole idea you can't be what you can't see. And until we increase representation in certain areas, and Ben touched on this briefly as well, but that goes for our industry, and we increase representation and you give room for those voices to have voice and to positions in positions of power as well, not going to create real change. And I think, and I was saying as well about coaches, like you look at Ryan Giggs, he was essentially handed a job for Wales upon his retirement as well, and black players who want to coach are not getting the same opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look at the amount of white coaches in football, elite level football, and then you look at the amount of purely white players, and the amount of players it's a lot more diverse. So then why does it stop once they retire, and then only the white coaches are being given these opportunities and encouraged to pursue them? So I think that's a massive area where the Premier League can look at itself, and not just the Premier League, all football at all levels can look at itself and improve. Look, people say sports and politics don't mix, but I think those people are deluded because it absolutely does. And you know, we've been speaking for 20 minutes about the two subjects here, very fluidly. I do want to move on to you know, Premier League starting back, and we all here, you know, primarily we're here to talk about football more than anything. So I think this is the right moment. Well, not the right moment, but you understand what I'm saying. I think it's time to talk about football. Premier League's coming back. I know we're all very excited about that. Inam, you're not a Chelsea fan, but
I'm not. I follow them very closely. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you follow them very closely, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on the hijacked former Liverpool move that has now become a Chelsea move, Timo Werner. I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, first of all, I thought it was when I saw it, I was like, no way. But I think it's important that, I mean, Chelsea saw the opportunity and they went for it. And I think that's and I'm not trying to do any type of digs, but I think big, ambitious clubs do that. If they want this guy, they're going to pay whatever amount of money they want to pay. I can understand why Liverpool didn't want to do that. They didn't want to pay the money because it's a lot of money. And I think the whole philosophy is about spending 30 odd, 20 odd and building that player, or could be Klopp's philosophy. But I think it's a fantastic move for them to add Werner and Ziyech coming in the summer as well. I think it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they line up next season. I'm not going to say anything yet because it depends what happens, but it's going to be it's really, really interesting.
Yeah, for me, I think what it is a signal is that Chelsea can come out of this pandemic and maybe not be as financially scuppered as other teams. I mean, you talk about Liverpool. We've heard that potentially they won't be able to make any major signings this summer, which is hard to imagine for a team that, you know, won the Champions League last year. They're going to win the Premier League this season. So, you know, they're one of the best, if not the best team in the world right now. And they're having to decide that, look, we can't even reinvest in our squad. So I think that speaks to Chelsea and their power and Abramovich. And it also leads me on to a point I wanted to talk about the Women's Super League. Chelsea have just, you know, won the league there. Becky, I wanted to get your thoughts. And, you know, they've donated £100,000 to charity, which is a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, Chelsea donated £100,000 to Refuge, which is a charity that is supporting victims of domestic abuse during the coronavirus pandemic. You know, you're comparing two teams, you're comparing Liverpool and Chelsea, and you look at what Liverpool as a club have done to support their women's team, which is essentially nothing, and their team's being relegated. And I think it speaks volumes about a club that Chelsea is able to take 100,000 that would go towards building their women's team and is able to donate it. It speaks volumes of how much support they're receiving as a club.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they so many other clubs wouldn't be able to just donate that money. And this isn't a criticism of Chelsea. It's a wonderful thing they're doing, but it does speak to the support that they're getting for that club. They're being able to invest that. I mean, they spent £1 million on Sam Kerr last season. So, you know, they are above, and it just shows on the field because they've won the league. And as you mentioned before, Liverpool getting no support, they're getting relegated now. So, but moving on to other areas, Ben, I mean, look, we're Arsenal fans. Manchester City, Arsenal, that's the first game back. How are you feeling about that? I mean, I can see you chewing on your sandwich. I'll speak for a little bit more while you swallow that down and prepare to articulate your thoughts.
I've got some mixed feelings, man. I mean, it's no secret we lost in a closed door friendly to Brentford, which Brentford is an up and coming and an exciting championship side, but a team of our caliber, we have no business losing to them. I will say there is some positives. I think it's good to see Lacazette in good shooting form, as well as Nketiah in good shooting form. It is never a bad thing to have multiple strikers in good form. Competition is fierce at the moment for that striker position. But our defense, as normal, is in complete shambles. I don't know if anybody watching the pod has seen the highlights from that game. David Luiz giving the ball away cheaply as normal. Socrates looking completely discombobulated. Arteta's really got a job on his hands to try to get our back line sorted.
I think how in the week tweeted something about how it's ridiculous that people are using that amount of footage to kind of make their assumptions of what's going to happen when the league restarts. And I kind of agree with him. I think, man, players make errors all the time. Like a player can dribble the whole team. That doesn't mean he's going to be, when he's back, he's going to be fantastic. But I think it is worrying signs that they can't beat Brentford. But you look at Chelsea as well; they only beat Reading 1-0. So I think everyone is just kind of slow at making their way in. But I think Arsenal have a lot of work to do when they come back.
I would agree with you. I just will say, like, obviously you can't tell what happened throughout the entire game just by watching a 3-minute highlight video. But the problems that I saw in that highlight video are continuing along the same theme line that we had throughout the entire season. So,
well, I mean, there is some positives too, because William Saliba will be back next season. He comes back from his loan. So, look, I think the David Luiz deal was a bit dodgy, but I think him coming back could be good. Could be good for you guys.
I don't know about that, but potentially a little bit of injection from Thomas Partey would be a nice.
He's not coming to Arsenal, mate. He's forget about it.
Why not?
Forget. It's like they're trying to get they're trying to get a new deal at Atletico, so they're going to use Arsenal as bait. Like, he's not coming to Arsenal.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy, but
you heard it here first. Yuppie put his reputation on the line.
How many times have been wrong, huh?
All right, Hal. So before your batteries got taken out there, I could tell that you had something on the tip of your tongue as I was talking. What did you think of the Brentford debacle?
I would say that I think we maybe conceded the last 3 goals, or at least the last 2 goals in the last 20 minutes, where we rotated the squad, because obviously it's a friendly, so you can make as many subs as you like. But I think that leads into an interesting point where obviously we're going to get 5 substitutions in Premier League football now, which is a way to completely, that's changing half of your outfield team potentially at half time, or at 60 minutes or whatever. So that could have a massive effect. And I think Arteta's maybe so far not been that good with his substitutes, I would think. It seems like a niche criticism, but like sometimes I think he showed his inexperience. So this will be a great opportunity for him to learn when you suddenly have to make 2 extra subs than you would usually. But I'm also interested to hear, Becky, your thoughts as a Manchester United fan, because Manchester United were in a very good place. I think they were on the rise. Solskjaer seemed to be getting it right. Bruno Fernandes was playing very well. So I just want to know if you feel optimistic for this remainder.
I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic, because I think, kind of like with the Brentford Arsenal match, you can't really tell how teams are going to be coming out of this pandemic. We don't really know how lockdown has affected each player, or how games are going to go. We know that we're playing Tottenham first. Dele Alli is obviously not playing because he was suspended over his post about the coronavirus that he made back in February. But anything can happen. We've got, on the bright side, Pogba back. We've got Rashford back. And personally, I am beyond excited to see Fernandes and Rashford play together. I think if that works, it could be like the link up between those 2 players could be phenomenal for us. But that being said, I think all my optimism has to remain cautious, just because there's too many unknowns still coming out of this lockdown and into restart.
Also, shout out to Marcus Rashford, who's done some incredible charity work during this period. I think he deserves a lot of respect from all footballing fans.
Yeah, he announced he raised £3 million to feed vulnerable children in the UK, which is more than the UK government is doing for a lot of kids in this country, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's ironic how Matt Hancock pointed the finger at Premier League footballers at the start of this pandemic, and now here we are, where one 21-year-old, 22-year-old, whatever footballer has done so much more for the fucking country. So, I think, look, we can assume Liverpool are going to get first position, and we can assume City are probably going to get second. I think Leicester will squeeze in third, I want to know what you guys. I'll start with you, Ben. I want to know who, if we give Liverpool and Manchester City the top 2 positions, who are going to come in second and third? I mean, third and fourth. Sorry.
Third, I actually think that Leicester will hold on as well. Fourth is a tricky one. I really, really hate to say this, but I think with Rashford coming back, and Fernandes, injecting a lot of life into that midfield, that United might be able to hold on to fourth. I will say I don't want that to happen, but I see that as the most likely outcome at this point.
Yeah, for sure. I would actually just say I echo those opinions. As much as it hurts me, I think Manchester United have got just a little bit of an edge on Chelsea. I do think that would swap round maybe in a season's time when they've got Ziyech and every other Havertz and Werner and all the players they're going to fucking buy. But for now, yeah, I think Manchester United might sneak into that fourth position. We'll go to you, Inam, to get your thoughts.
First of all, I wouldn't believe the Havertz rumors, but I think if you look at Leicester's running, I mean they're still going to play Arsenal, Tottenham, Man United, teams that will be absolutely pushing for that. I think Man United are going to come back strong. Seriously, I think they're going to come back not very, very strong, but I think they're going to give it a big push. But I still think Chelsea will make Champions League. I'm not sure. I think, as I said, let's have 3 big games, but if they make the Champions League, that'll be. But I think it either stays the same or Manchester United slips in there, and it's Chelsea, Man United, and Leicester may start.
Yeah, I do think, to argue Leicester's point, obviously they were out of form before the lockdown occurred, but they've got Ndidi coming back and Jamie Vardy, who was back, but he was returning from injury, didn't look like himself, but maybe back to full fitness. I think he's currently the Premier League top scorer, so he could. I think he just has enough in the tank, as does that squad, to get them over the line. We'll end here with Becky with your thoughts. I'm going to guess. Well, I won't guess. I'll let you say.
Well, I mean, first of all, I've got to say that is the smartest all 3 of you have ever sounded on this podcast. Really love to hear it. And I think I've got to throw all my cautious optimism out the window and say, yeah, hell yeah, Man United in for fourth. I don't think we're going to creep up to third, to be fair, but I think we could squeak in fourth place. And I think Leicester, despite having some hard games, I think they'll hold on. I think you're right about the players coming back from injury. Vardy has had time to, work on his fitness right now, and I think they'll be able to hang on. But we'll go with Leicester hanging on in third and United squeezing in there in fourth place. I just want to say that this has been an incredibly important episode of the Champagne Pod. For us, it's important that we make it clear where we stand, which is fuck racism. It's as simple as that for us. For all of us, it's been both a really interesting and important podcast, and also a fun one. Inam, thank you for being here.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And Ben, great to have you from across the pond as well.
Yep, love being on. If I could say one last thing just to sign off here. More love, less hate. White people, do better. And make sure you get your fucking news from a credible source, please.
Yes, absolutely. Second that completely. Hal, as always, it's been a time.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this. This has been an important episode, and obviously it's just great to talk about football with people who, sometimes got very good opinions. So.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in to this episode of Champagne Football. If you don't agree with what we had to say, please don't listen again. That's fine. We don't mind. And for everybody else, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll be back with more episodes soon.